G'day YouTube, Warbles on a lot here. Thursday the 5th of September 2013, and in 2 days time Australia has a federal election. I thought it might be time for somebody to give a bit of an overview from a green perspective. The perspective of somebody who actually lives in the forest. Yeah? So, at the moment, Australia's had Labor governments for 6 years. Right? There was Kevin Rudd was elected, resoundingly defeating the Howard Liberal National Coalition government, the Liberal National Minority government, only able to have been formed because of the coalition. But anyway, Kevin Rudd turned out to be a bit of an intense over-organiser, a workaholic, and people got pretty sick of him. And he made a bit of a mess of a few things like the mining tax. And coming up to an election, it looked as if Tony Abbott had him bluffed. And that was when the right wing of the Federal Labor Party decided to take a leaf from the tactical handbook of the right wing of the New South Wales Labor Party, and any time the New South Wales Labor Party thought it was about to lose an election, they put a woman in as Premier. First they chopped and changed, but they put a woman in to lose. Christine Keneally comes to mind. Okay, so Kevin Rudd was knifed in the back by the party apparatchiks. And Julia Gillard was probably expected to lose that election, and Tony Abbott would have made a bit of a fool of himself on the international stage by pretending that climate science was absolute crap, because that's what he's on record as believing. And then Kevin Rudd or somebody else could have won the next election. But Julia Gillard didn't stick to the script. She promised the Australian people that in defiance of all the climate science, she was never ever going to have a carbon tax in any government that she led. Okay, the Australian population had been scared away from the idea of a carbon tax by Tony Abbott, claiming that a carbon tax was going to put up the price of absolutely everything, drive their electricity bill out through the top of the roof, and it was unnecessary because he said climate science is crap. So when Julia Gillard imposed a carbon levy, Tony Abbott went bananas. The Australian electorate decided that they had been lied to for tactical reasons. They got the shits with her. And her popularity reached an all-time low. She was about to lead Australian Labor Party to its biggest ever electoral defeat in the history of Federation. So the party hatchet room apparatchiks pulled out their knives again, and they cut her down and they reimposed Kevin. Put Kevin back in. And now the Labor Party doesn't understand why everybody is sick of the Labor Party as a brand. Nobody trusts them. So out there in mortgage land in the suburbs, the Australian population are vaguely aware that Australia's economy's been growing at 2.6% annual average rate for the past 12 months. They're vaguely aware that other countries don't have it that good, that the Americans and English between them would love to have 2.6%. They're lucky to have about a 0.5% growth rate. But the Australian voters are aware that they were lied to. Julia Gillard lied to them, and then the Labor Party backroom boys shuffled the decks of cards twice, and they're just unelectable. They are unelectable. So we look like we're going to be in for a Tony Abbott Prime Ministership. Now we have no idea what Tony Abbott's going to cut, but we know that he wants to cut something. Years and years ago, there was an election campaign wherein the Labor Party used loophole theory to wait until the very last minute to release their policy costing estimates so that the Liberal National Party had no time to critique the Labor Party's proposed policies. Okay, when the Liberal National Party got into power anyway, they legislated, they made a law that says that in the lead up to an election, the contesting parties must submit their policies for costing by the Office of Budget Honesty of a Department of the Treasury with an equally profound sounding name. Okay, so you'd think that the Liberal National Party coalition under Tony Abbott in opposition would be keen to have their policies costed? No, not a bit of it. As of this morning, the Labor Party had submitted 64 policies for costing. The Green Party had submitted 71 policies for costing. The Labor Party had submitted, the Liberal Party had submitted none. Yeah, none. The Liberal National Coalition, which can't stand the idea of the Labor Party and the Greens having had a minority government, they are unwilling to expose their figures to scrutiny, let alone review, in time for the election. This smacks of sleaziness. It's the kind of thing that would make you not want to buy a used car from somebody, let alone elect them to high office. But, as I explained, the climate of opinion in Australia is that they're going to vote against the Labor Party. And all the media reporting, and maybe Murdoch's got something to do with it, but maybe he hasn't, all the media reporting on the election build-up has been strictly two-party preferred. You know, every day you get the two-party preferred this for Prime Minister, two-party preferred for government, two-party preferred basis. It's as if the Greens don't exist. It's like the sheeples are being herded so that they will not think about voting Green. And that's a bit of a worry, you know, because we've just had the warmest May, June, July and August in the history of recording meteorological figures. The International Panel on Climate Change has a report in the pipeline. It has been leaked in New Scientist magazine that states that we are already on track for 5 degrees of global warming by the end of the century. 5 degrees, cool, yeah. Well, we just had a winter that was 2 degrees above average. Sydney just had the warmest winter in history. All of those people who've got money invested in the Snowy Mountains ski resorts, tough shit, fellas, you know, you got your artificial snow rained on. Didn't have a good season at all, did you? You're not going to have any more snow to ski on pretty soon. But none of that matters to the Liberal National Coalition. They don't want climate science to be real, so their answer is to defund the research. That was the announcement today. Tony Abbott's going to defund research that the Liberal National Party thinks is not sensible. Like, if a politician who represents a party, who represents shareholders, entrepreneurs and business people, who regard any form of government regulation to protect employers or property owners from the activities of poorly thought out, quote, enterprises. They call that red tape. Anything that restricts their ability to plan to make money out of exploiting the environment, exploiting the workers, off-shifting their costs to somebody else. They call that red tape and they hate it. They believe that it's acceptable to buy a share in the profits without accepting a share of responsibility for the losses of a corporate entity called a company, a corporation, a limited liability company. These are the people at the heart of the Liberal Party's power base. They are in coalition with the National Party, who are the Loggers, Miners and Farmers Party. They regard any government regulation which protects the environment as being green tape. As far as they're concerned, once upon a time there were places that were so far away from the throbbing centre of economic busyness that it was okay to call them a national park because, you know, like it was a long way away and the soil wasn't quite so good and the water wasn't so good and the rainfall wasn't so good and it was really rocky ground and you could call that a national park and let the kangaroos hop about, you know, and that didn't bother them too much. However, now, like 96% of Australia is under the hands of industrial farmers and miners and loggers. The only bit that hasn't been destroyed and stuffed is the bit that was set aside as a national park. And now the loggers and the farmers and the miners and the entrepreneurs, the Liberal National Party coalition for the minority government, they've decided that now they want to go out there and log and mine and shoot and fish and hunt in the national parks. They hate the idea that if, for example, you can go into a logging coop and find something like this heath plant, which is in fact endangered, you can close the logging coop. I don't like that idea. It's an obstacle to their making money, and that's all they really care about, is making money. Now, in addition to the Liberal Party, the National Party, the Labor Party, who were founded by the unions in 1901, and all they're interested in is getting fair working conditions for the blue-collar workers. That means they have to work for someone. So basically whatever the Liberal Party and the National Party want to do, the Labor Party want to be employed to work for them. That's the problem. That they have no plan except to grow the economy to, well, 3.2% is what they'd like to grow it at. It's growing at 2.6. The unemployment rate's around 5% or something. Their idea is to have everybody fully employed, permanently, working to grow the economy. That's their only plan, is to become something like a cancer on the face of the planet and just keep expanding until you choke every system. There are people who are disgruntled with that. A lot of them reckon that it's not enough. They want government assistance to maintain otherwise uneconomic activity in places that are going broke. So you get outfits like the Bobcat, a Big Hat Queensland Half-Wit Party, the Clive Palmer United wannabe billionaire. Wouldn't it be nice if he was a mining magnate, actually white shoe syndrome property developer from the Joe Bjelke-Peterson days of bulldozing through the rights of miners and gas frackers to trample the rights of the rural citizens. Yeah, the Palmer United Party of Bastards. He's got a lot of money, so he's getting a fair bit of press. The Pauline Hanson One Nation Party, they've come out from under a rock and resurrected themselves and look like they might actually even get up a senator. You got the Christian Democrats, run by Fred Nile, who's still desperately getting people to try and think about Jesus every time they visualise a condom. There's a climate science denial party, or Sceptic party, whatever they call themselves. They don't believe that carbon dioxide is a greenhouse gas, or they don't think that burning coal and oil produces carbon dioxide, or they think that it's all due to a volcano. They don't want to accept the fact that humanity has changed the reflecting power of planet Earth by cutting down the trees in order to feed the vegetation to a sheep. And whereas we've been walking on an endangered species sanctuary, and you know, you've had a bit of a look at how the greenies like to run Australia, we're now coming out onto a sheep farm. This is what hard-footed land lice do to the Australian environment if they're just let go laissez-faire. It's not on a slope of more than 30 degrees, it's not endangered, and you can hoe into it, and nobody told them about the heath plant. If they were on my side of the fence, they would have been on this side too, don't you think? So, who else have we got? Yeah, the Shooters, Hooters and Feral Pig Rooters party. They're the ones who said to the state governments, oh yeah, look, we know you can't quite pass a motion to sell the power distribution grid through Parliament because you haven't got the numbers, but we'll vote with you if you'll let us go shooting recreationally in the state forest and the national parks. And guess what? That's exactly what the Barry O'Farrell government said. The Liberal National Party idea is to dissolve all federal control of environmental matters and hand it back to the states, so people like Campbell Newman in Queensland can just crush, kill and destroy whatever bit of the environment he's got left. And the Barnett government in Western Australia is another shining example of what the Liberal National Coalition minority government is going to do when they get in power on Saturday night when the election gets called. There are some really interesting preference flows. So strangely, the One Nation Party, if you vote for them and they don't get in, your preferences are going to go to the Greens. So, you know, yay team, thank you Pauline Hanson. I never thought I'd get to say that. There's a fella called Senator Xenophon who's deeply against poker machines, and because the Labor Party didn't do what they promised him they were going to do, his preferences go to the Liberal Party, and their policy is laissez-faire poker machines as many as possible. Yeah? Some insane shit's going to go down. My suggestion, because climate science is not crap, global warming is real, the extreme weather extremities are going to get worse. Unless you want to be burnt in a bushfire or drowned in a flood or have your head smashed by a hailstone the size of a watermelon because the thermal convection currents in the storms are bigger because we've got more moisture in the atmosphere and there's more heat in the atmosphere, so there's more energy in the atmosphere, so the thunderstorms can lift the icicles up and down until they refreeze big enough to drop out of the thermal columns. Unless you want to be a victim of all that, then vote against it, right? Vote against the Labor Party, vote against the Liberal Party, vote against the National Party, vote against the One Nationers, vote against the Bobcat a Big Hat Party, vote against the Palmer United Puppies, vote against all the people whose big grand plan is to fuck the environment as fast as they can, because that's all they can imagine doing is grow the economy and stuff the environment. Vote Green. We may not get any candidates into power, but at least you and I who vote Green, we will know that we voted against the bullshit. And it's a case of vote Green or die. You know, like, my big hope is that whatever entity gets to nudge the randomness of the micrometeorology of the extreme weather that global warming has unleashed upon us, I hope that entity is finely tuned enough that my little camp back there doesn't get hammered and flattened and busted and burned and fucked up too much, while the people who are only interested in stuffing the environment faster to make more profit more quickly, they get their just desserts, whatever that is, because they've chosen it. It's a free will universe. Nobody held a gun to my head and said pay the rates for 20 years and try and resurrect the country to look something like what it did before the sheep and potato brigade got let loose. That was my free will. Nobody's going to force you to vote Liberal. I can't force you to vote Green. But, you know, we're at the situation where it's vote Green or die. You know? Because the weather gods are pretty fucking pissed off with laissez-faire capitalists and dickheads who want to work for them. That may not be totally, utterly politically correct. Vote Green or die. But I didn't make the rules. I just sit up here on the ridge top, you know, the rat bag on the ridge, the fool on the hill, the mad scientist, the hillbilly hermit. And I look at what's going on, and I listen to the radio, and I try and figure out what the hell the rest of humanity thinks it's doing and why they think that's a good idea. And it's the best advice I can come up with. Reduce, reuse, recycle. Teach yourself to consume less. Learn to repair stuff. Reuse whatever you got. Make it yourself if you can. Try and reduce your carbon output. Search sunfoil on YouTube. Learn how to put a solar panel on the roof of your car. Feed sunlight to your car battery while it's in the car park, so next time you go out and ask it to start the motor, the battery's already full and you haven't got to burn any fuel to recharge the battery to kiss and make up for the time in the car park following the short engine run time that didn't finish charging it from last time. Vote Green or die. Warbles on a lot to YouTube. Ciao.